Well, a happy Saturday evening, friends. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. I hope that many of you were doing what I was just doing, watching the president's rally. He did two rallies over the last few hours. I watched both of them, one in Michigan and then just now in Wisconsin. And boy, there's nothing like a Trump rally. I've been to a number of them in person, and I know that some of you have also. There's nothing like a Trump rally, whether you're there in person or whether you're watching it on TV or online, because let me tell you, it fires you up. Those that, say to me they're not sure if they're voting for the president or they're voting for Biden, it's like, I got to wonder to myself, have you ever seen one of these? Have you ever really listened to his speech from beginning to end? I mean, listening to one another. Isn't that a key ingredient? Isn't that an essential element of getting to the truth and understanding things and getting the right information and getting on the right page? I mean, listening is one of those basic skills we learn as human beings. And as Brenda is saying, we love an honest person, President Trump. He brings such a sincerity and honesty to this job and to the leadership of America. And, this is not just, battling with words. We say he's honest, somebody else says he's a liar. No. Hold on a second. Look at the facts. Look at the facts. Look at what he does, for example, with the trade deals. Honesty and fairness mark the way that he handles these trade deals. Honesty and fairness that ends up benefiting you and me, because he's not allowing these trade deals that rob us of millions of jobs and tens of thousands of factories. He's not allowing that. He's adjusting, or if necessary, scrapping or getting us out of the deals that put America at a disadvantage, and insisting that there be honesty. The drug prices. Why are the drug prices coming down? Favored nations clause. He invoked the favored nations clause, as he mentions in his speeches, which is a clause that says, okay, if you're in an agreement with various other nations about these transactions, any nation that gets a break, all the nations involved get the same break. So in other words, you get the lowest drug prices in the world for your prescription drugs. I mean, he knows the rules. He knows how to see the best way of using the rules and applying them, and he gets the job done. Well, before we go deeper into that, I have a few notes, a few thoughts I want to share with you about some of the things that he has been saying in these speeches. And then, I see your comments here. Someone there from Catholics for Trump. Okay, I'm part of that too. Carol, thank you. I'll see your comments and we'll talk back and forth. Phyllis got the book today, Pro-Life Reflections for Every Day. That's the book we pray from on these programs. So let me see what the reflection is here today. Let's give this a little read here. Matthew 28. Jesus says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Reflection. What if a church said that as part of its worship service, it would sacrifice a little child on the altar? Certainly the state would step in to stop that. And few people would regard that as an infringement of the separation of church and state. Neither is it an infringement when the church tells the state that it cannot authorize the killing of children, as it does by abortion. Let us pray. O God, you are the Lord of both church and state. Grant that neither infringe upon the human rights of your people. In Jesus' name, amen. Pro-Life Reflections for Everyday.com is where you can get this book. So, like I say, it really is great listening to the president. Bill is saying he saw the president in Fort Myers just yesterday. Fantastic. I'm glad you got a chance to see that. When you really listen carefully to the things he says, you see a very strong, deep, personal, human side. You hear about the policy side. That comes out strongly. You also hear the personal side. And let me just touch on something that if you watched his speech just now, you will have heard, but it deserves dwelling on it a little bit. First of all, the HBCUs. Okay, so one of the many great things he has done for the black community, and many of you are watching here on Alveda King's pages and platforms, and she's been working with me here full-time for some 15 years. She's part of our Priests for Life team. She heads up Civil Rights for the Unborn, which is one of our outreaches. And she's a strong supporter of the president and knows that how much he has done for the black community. And one of those things is the historically black colleges and universities, the funding for them. So we know from a policy standpoint that he has made more stable and more permanent the funding of those colleges and universities. But today he brought us in a little bit to more of the human side and the history of that. He becomes president, and then, one day this group of people representing these HBCUs come to see him, and, it's for the purpose of getting their funding. So he figures it's a pro forma thing, that he does as president, and okay, they came, we give them the funding, and that's great. Then the following year, they come back. Oh, hi, it's good to see you again. We're here to, request the funding. And he does it again. And they come back a third time. And then it starts to click. It's like, wait a minute. You have to keep coming back here and asking every year? And one of the representatives there of these HBCUs said, yeah, we feel like beggars. And the president takes then the initiative of saying, well, why can't we make this easier for you? Why don't we put this funding on a long-term basis? And he did it. But it was that respect for the person. It's like, this is a worthy thing to do. Well, let's fund these colleges and universities. And here, these poor people are coming here, and they're feeling like they're beggars. But let's put the funding on a permanent basis. And he did it, and it's one of the greatest contributions, one of those concrete signs of the way he has helped the black community. Now he's got bigger and better plans even than that with the Platinum Plan, if you read the Platinum Plan. Linda T. is saying, thanks, Linda, she's saying, I'm disheartened how people are so hateful to Trump. Linda, I think about this every day, too. It's like, there's something about this that we all have to realize, and we have to challenge our friends who are on the other side of this particular political position. Where's the hatred coming from? Why the hatred? And it's like, for the good of themselves and for the good of the country and for the good of all of us, can't we get beyond that and look at the kind of things that we're talking about now, right? I mean, look at the concrete things that he's doing, and look at the human spirit, the compassion that gives rise to so many of his policy successes. Now, what he was also sharing about was, obviously, as we all know, some weeks ago, he was diagnosed with the virus, and boy, he got over it real quick. But he was reflecting on the fact that, some of those who have this hatred for him, and it's a knee-jerk reaction, and I've never heard any of those people give any reason. There's no solid reason. If I come on here and I start talking positively about the president, I could sit here and talk for an hour, and these never-Trumpers will say, oh, you just spent an hour lying. But you see, they feel like they can gratuitously just write off what we're saying and what the president's saying just by saying, oh, they're lying. And then they don't back it up. They don't back it up with anything because they have nothing. But the president talked about how, so he contracted this virus, and now he's over it completely. And boy, oh boy, he's doing 2 rallies today, another one tomorrow, 2 more on Monday. He's going from city to city, coast to coast. full of energy in these speeches. You could see it. And he's doing all his work in the meantime. Okay, so he says, look, some people they'll look at these rallies, and you see some of these comments that people will make. They'll say, oh, it's a super spreader event. And all they can do is criticize. All they can do is be negative. All they can do is presume to know what they don't know, and to say, just in their imagination, oh, well, you see, all these people are gathering together, so it must be, a spreading of the disease. Well, how do you know that? These rallies you go to, they take your temperature before you can go inside. They're looking for symptoms. They're not going to let you in if you have a temperature. Most of the people there, wearing masks and whatnot. But, to take this negative attitude that, there's nothing good about coming together for these gatherings. And a lot of these rallies are being held in states where the Democrat governors still have the state locked down. And he makes reference to that. And he says, come on, you got to open back up. Why? Because there's another value here together with being cautious about catching the virus, which is not anywhere near a death sentence. In fact, it's not even the same thing we were dealing with back in the spring. It's not. We've come a very, very, very long way. But there's another value to be considered here, which is we've got to live our lives. If you think back to 9/11, what was one of the key things that we were saying right in the midst of that terrible terror attack? We stood up as Americans and we said, we are not going to let the terrorists win by paralyzing us in fear. You remember that? I was living in New York City. Our Priest for Life office was in New York City. We saw the smoke coming up. We saw right outside our building, a little bit in the distance, lower Manhattan. We were on Staten Island, and the smoke was billowing up. Who of us can ever forget that day, no matter where we were, right? But wasn't that the attitude of Americans? We're going to live our lives as Americans. We're not going to be afraid. We're not going to be deterred. We're not going to let the threat of terrorism control our lives. Now, ever since then, and that was already 2 decades ago, right? Boy, how time flies. Think about it. Compare it to 9/11. Ever since then, sure, we've been doing some things differently, haven't we? And we've gotten used to it. If you see something, say something. We're all a whole lot more alert than we were before 2001. We have a whole lot more security at the airports and in some other ways. Yes, we've been living ever since then on a higher level of alertness to terrorist attacks. And all kinds, no doubt, all kinds of procedures and protocols have been put in place in our government, both on the local and the federal level. We have an entire new department that was created of Homeland Security, and on it goes. But we've been able to live our lives, right? You're not going to stay cowering in your bed, in your living room or your basement because there might be a terror attack when you go to work or when you go to the mall, right? We live our lives as Americans. This is what the president is saying. He said, look, we've got to live our lives. We can't, Biden's talking about, let's lock down the country again. People don't want that. And that doesn't mean they're reckless. We get a group of people together. That doesn't mean we're being careless. It means we know that there's a value. We have to take care of our health, but there's also a value, Joe, in liberty. In doing the things that we do each day, getting together with one another, conducting our business, getting our children to school, going to restaurants and movie theaters, and living our lives as free men and women. So the president also made a reference here again to the fact of the personal dimension, the compassion dimension. And that is how he said, I have, as President of the United States, these various meetings, and there are people there telling me their stories of how they they lost a relative, they lost a son or a daughter in an attack while they were in the service. And I'm there as president of the country that they gave their lives for, consoling these parents in their loss. And he said, so what am I going to do? Say, oh, well, I'm very sorry, but we have to keep at arm's distance? We have to keep 6 feet away, but oh, I'm very sorry. No, he said, no, you can't do that. And so he was explaining why, you come close to people, you embrace people, you take care of people, you have that compassion, you have that care. And, when I was listening to him say this, I thought about a sermon that Pope Francis gave, and it was early on after he became Pope. It was on the Feast of St. Thomas on the 3rd of July. And I have that sermon here, and let me read to you a little bit from it. He was talking about the wounds of Jesus. Remember, because St. Thomas touched the wounds on that first Easter night. Okay, and by the way, for our technical team, we have a big echo going here in the studio. I trust I'm coming across okay to you, brothers and sisters. Here's what the Pope said. He said, we find Jesus' wounds in carrying out works of mercy, giving to our body, the soul too, but I stress the body. You can hear the echo too, right? Okay. Rob will take care of that. Let me see if excuse me just 1 second here. Let's see if we can lower this. All right, that should be better. Let me know, friends, if it sounds better now. The Pope is talking about the body. And he says, when we care for somebody, when we love somebody, when we serve somebody, we're not just talking about their souls, we're talking about their bodies. And he says, the body of your wounded brother, because he is hungry, because he is thirsty, because he is naked or humiliated, or a slave, or in jail, or in the hospital. The Pope says, these are the wounds of Jesus today. And then he says, we need to touch the wounds of Jesus. We must caress the wounds of Jesus. We need to bind the wounds of Jesus with tenderness. We have to kiss the wounds of Jesus, and this literally. Literally. Just think of what happened to St. Francis when he embraced the leper. The same thing that happened to Thomas. When he touched the wounds of Jesus, his life changed. So, just a little point here to make is compassion doesn't stop when there's a pandemic. Freedom doesn't stop when there's a pandemic. Embracing one another in our need doesn't stop when there's a pandemic. And the beauty of our president is he knows how to lead us. He knows how to deal with the health crisis because he's done more than anybody in the whole world to counteract this pandemic, and more successfully. And knows that it's just as important to protect freedom and human compassion and interaction as it is to protect us from a virus getting into our bodies. Okay, so keep the comments coming in. One of you is saying, Father, remind the audience to contribute to the Republican candidates who need our help to keep their seats. And I was going to say something actually about the races for Congress. As all important, of course, as the presidency is, we have to be able to give the president a Congress that'll work with him. Remember what happened when the House of Representatives, the worst thing that happened in the midterm elections of 2018 was that the House switched from Republican to Democrat control. That was a disaster because then the Democrat House didn't do anything. Or they wasted the time and the resources and the attention of the Congress and of their colleagues and of the American people on these pointless investigations, these witch hunts, these partisan, divisive. You talk about who's dividing the country. The president is not a divider of the country. The Democrats are. Look at what they've been doing in the House of Representatives. What this Russian collusion hoax and the Mueller report and all these hearings. What a waste of time. The subpoenas that they had to issue to various members of the administration, so that instead of doing the work for the American people, okay, helping us come out of poverty and come out of unemployment and get better median household income. And in fact, he succeeded in all of this despite these doings of the Democrats. I mean, they're taking the time and the attention of the people that should be doing all this good work in the administration, and instead investing it into these committee hearings where they get up on their big high horses and they say, we have to investigate collusion with the Russians. And meanwhile, they were the ones colluding with the Russians and spying on President Trump's campaign and really attempting a coup. This was an attempted coup of a duly elected president. And this false impeachment hoax, I mean, the Democrats were busy trying to impeach the president while the president was paying attention to the beginning of this Wuhan virus coming over from China. I mean, we've got to give the president a Congress that'll work with him on fulfilling his agenda for us, because he's fighting for us, the American people. So a very important aspect of this election, get these Republicans reelected, keep these Democrats out, get the Democrats out. We can win back the House. I think it's a gain of 17 seats or so that are critical, and we can gain back the House, keeping all the rest, of course. But do it. It's up to you. It's up to you. Pay as much attention to these House races and to volunteering for their campaigns and contributing to their campaigns and getting their record out. With our party comparison piece, even if you don't know the position of each and every member, you can be pretty reliably confident that these are the positions they take. You get this at votinginfo.net, comparison of the Republican-Democrat platforms. It quotes from the platforms on various different issues. And if your representative in Congress is a Democrat, he or she's going to be following the Democrat line on these issues. And if they're a Republican, they'll be following the Republican line. But again, the point is, the president can't make law. He can sign a bill into law, but that bill gets to his desk only when the House and the Senate agree on it. They've got to both pass the bill, reconcile it. There's a process called reconciliation. And the reconciliation process makes it so that there's one bill gets to the desk of the president so he can either sign it or veto it, depending what it was. Wow. I mean, how do you get an agenda done? And I mean, this is why, if some of you are wondering what the delay is, for example, in defunding Planned Parenthood, the delay is divided government. We would have many more pro-life bills signed into law on the federal level. We get a lot of them on the state level. We would have many more on the federal level if we would have a Republican House and a Republican Senate at the same time, Wilma, and of course, a pro-life Republican in the White House, as we have now. That's how you get, this is 8th grade social studies, right? This is basic civics 101. This is how our government works. Okay. Let me say so. Oh, by the way, let me show you this book. My friend and colleague Ed Martin, who works heads up the Phyllis Schlafly, the Eagle Forum, Phyllis Schlafly, great conservative leader. Ed, with whom I collaborate in many ways, issued this book called The Top 100 Trump Promises Made, Promises Kept. I want to mention a website to you where you can order this book. It's 145 pages. It's excellent. Each chapter is really just one page, is a promise made, promise kept. Really good stuff. again, now's the time. I mean, we only have a little over 2 weeks left. Now's the time for people to really be familiar with these things. Again, enough with just the, oh, I don't like him, or oh, I hate him, or enough of this. Let's read. Let's do our homework. Let's read. Let's find out, what is it, like I was saying last night, I mean, what is it about all these great accomplishments? Expanding health care for our veterans, raising the median income, increasing oil production. We're energy independent now. Remember growing up, it's like, oh, the Middle East, the oil, oh, we have to keep friendly with them. We're energy independent now. Biggest oil and natural gas producer in the world. Well, it's because the president believes in policies where we've got these natural gases under the ground. We should be able to go get them. It's our land. That's fracking. When I first heard about fracking in the political debates, I wasn't quite sure what it was. It's hydraulic fracturing. You go down and you drill in between the shale and you grab the natural gas that's in there and you harness it, and you have natural energy. Biden, you don't know what these people think. The left doesn't want us to do that. It's our own land. We got oil under the ground. We got gas, natural gas is under the ground. Go get it. Use it. God has given us the earth to use, right? Why does he give us the earth? So in any case, check out Ed's book. Now, here's where you can get this book. So if you think of the term promises made, promises kept, PMPK 2020, that's the website for Ed's book. PMPK, promises made, promises kept, 2020.com. And you'll be able right there to order this book. There's even a children's comic book there about promises made, promises kept by the president. What a beautiful way of conveying even to our youngest children all the good things that are happening, because these things are benefiting them. They should know. I read a story. I didn't get the whole story. I saw it quickly in my email today about a 12-year-old boy who was in school, was speaking up for the president. And was courageous. You've got to be courageous about that. It shouldn't be a matter of having courage, but the enemies of Trump want to make us feel like we don't even have freedom of speech, and the fact of the matter is, we do. There's an interesting dynamic. Margie is saying, vote red and vote in person. Yes, someone was saying on the comments a little bit earlier that she was there in the polling place, went to vote early in person. She said it was a breeze. It worked fine. It was safe. It was well organized. I was very glad to hear that, and thank you for sharing that comment with all the rest of us. And hey, let's do it. It's voting season now. Every day now, more and more states are starting their early voting, and we're going to see this thing now really, really skyrocketing. And listen, it's the president was mentioning today. He says, in Michigan we're ahead in the the early voting turnout, which is unusual because when you think about it, I mean, it's just a fact that demographically, Democrats have always been more inclined to vote early or send in their ballots by mail early, and Republicans, tend to want to go in person, and we go because usually the in-person voting has been on or closer to Election Day. The surge of Republican votes, keep in mind, comes later in the process. So don't be at all bothered if you hear these reports, because remember, this is psychological warfare. Carol, if you want to talk about being smart, we'll talk about that. Give us some of your ideas. If you hear reports of psychological warfare, people always on the other side, they always try to make us think that we're behind. We're actually not behind. But the fact of the matter is that they'll say things like, in this state, the early voting happened, and we have, way more Democrats came out to vote than Republicans. Well, that would be an advantage for them only under one condition, if today were Election Day. But it's not. And that's the point. There's only one time when you can count, the only count that matters, which is at the end of Election Day. So keep your head clear and straight and firm and looking forward and looking positive and working to do what has to be done. Thank you, Anthony, for your comment. I voted for the president and all Republicans. God bless you. You are the example of what we all have to do, and everybody who has done this. Christine is going to vote early next week. I'm afraid here in New York they'll make something up to close the polls on Election Day. Well, Christine, you know, smart thought. Let's not be surprised at what kind of shenanigans, especially again in these Democrat-run states, let's not be surprised at what kind of shenanigans they're going to try to pull. Of course, you know, the good thing about it is people are more and more sensitive right now, this year more than ever before, about these shenanigans. We're on high alert. And so it's going to be harder, I think, for folks to get away with things like that. Joyce, you're from Arizona. God bless you. Arizona is a really key state, both for the presidency and for the Senate. You've got Martha McSally out there, and my goodness, it's beautiful. Joshua, I can see your comments, and I can see all the other comments. The comments are coming in from, remember, friends, when I see the comments, they're coming in from multiple different platforms. So you're not going to see all the comments that I mentioned. Some of them are coming from Periscope and Twitter. Most of them are coming from Facebook. Some of them are coming from YouTube. Some of them are coming from other platforms. Linda is asking, is voting early safe? You know, every state is dealing with the safety measures differently, but, you know, there are the common guidelines from the CDC, which we've all become familiar with. And a lot of how safe it's going to be really depends on you, of course. But if in your community people are going to the grocery store, they should be able to go to the polling place, or if they're going to restaurants. I mean, you can be sure that the folks in the polling places are very, very sensitive to the norms that they have to follow for safety. So with their efforts combined with our personal attentiveness and care, I would say absolutely it's safe. You know, take the precautions, but do the same thing that you would do if you're going to the shopping center. You know, if we can shop, we can vote in person. Now, another thing I wanted to point out, you know, from these president's rallies, and my friends, please watch at least some of these rallies. Got another one tomorrow night. We'll listen to the president, and then I'll come on after he's done, now or at 9 o'clock, whichever comes later. Interesting dynamic. Have you noticed how sometimes he'll say something, he'll make a joke, and his supporters and all of us that are watching from around the country, we know that he's kidding. We know when he's kidding, and we know when he's serious, okay? When he says, I'm going to keep cutting regulations, well, you take that literally, because that's exactly what he does. But when he says, you know, like they were joking tonight, and Patriot is asking when I'm going to be on RSBN again. Usually I join them or try to join them when the rally is within driving distance here in Florida. So whenever the next Florida rally is announced, that's when there's a good chance that I'll be there. So we'll see how that gets scheduled. But you've seen it if you watch these rallies, that the president will joke. You know, and so tonight they were having some fun with, like Katie is saying, I love the president's sense of humor. You know, I do too. And, you know, it's part of that really beautiful human spirit that he has. He's really a great guy. And so he'll joke around and say, yeah, you know, 4 more years, you know, maybe when, he says, well, when I leave office, you know, here's what's going to happen. He says, maybe it'll be 4 more years, maybe it'll be 8 more years, maybe it'll be 12 more years, you know. And we love that because we know he's doing such a good job. We love him as president. We would love for him to be able to stay for more than a second term. But he knows full well the Constitution does not permit a president to have a third term. Even if they go out of office and someone else is president, they can't go back again and run again to have a third term. Karen is saying he was funny tonight. He really was. So funny about 45 joking about looking better than JFK. That was a funny moment tonight as well. And, you know, and we know how to laugh with him. Now, here's the interesting thing. The Trump haters and the fake news especially, they don't know how to laugh with him. This is the interesting thing. They have no sense of humor. So when he says something like, you know, 12 more, and the people actually started chanting it tonight, 12 more years, 12 more years. And when we do something like that, we love the Constitution. We're going to be the last people to violate the Constitution. But the fake news, they'll make something out of that. Well, is he really going to is he really going to leave office when his term is finished? Whether it's now or 4 years from now, is he really going to? And even the president gives a couple of these other examples, like when he was talking about all the things the Democrats want to do for the illegal immigrants. They want to give them free health care. They want to give them the right to vote. And he says, yeah, they want to give them a Rolls Royce too. And everybody laughs, and people know that he's joking. Except the fake news, they don't want to know, and they say, oh, the president lied. The president misrepresented the Democrats because he said they're going to get a Rolls Royce. But it's not what he's saying, literally. And then there was another example. He says, well, I'm young and in perfect shape. He'll use hyperbole. It's a figure. It's a manner of speech. You use hyperbole and you joke. Okay. So the interesting difference between the Trump supporters and the Trump enemies is that we know how to take him seriously, but not always literally. The other side do not take him seriously, but do take him literally when he says things that are meant as a joke. And that's an interesting lens through which to interpret what's going on here in this battle over President Trump. We know how to take him seriously. We take him seriously. We know he means business. He's a fighter for us. Some people say, oh, well, he should be more presidential. Well, he's too busy to be presidential. He's getting things done for us. It's not a matter of being a certain format, speaking in a certain format. It's a matter of get the job done. That's what counts. And so we know how to take him seriously, but we don't always take him literally because sometimes he jokes around. The other side, they don't take him seriously at all. They didn't take his run for president seriously. They haven't taken anything seriously about him. But they end up taking him literally. It's a really interesting difference. Okay, so another thing I want to bring up to you now, this is really encouraging. Again, remember I talked about a moment ago the psychological warfare. Listen, do not in any way be discouraged or worried. We are going to win this election. There is so much more support for this president, enthusiasm, than even there was 4 years ago, and he won 4 years ago, even though, like he said, every single place where he had to win, he was behind in the polls on election day. There were 9 key areas, key states where he had to win, and he was, he asked on election day, so how are we doing in the polls? You're behind in every single one of them. And that night, of those 9, he won 9. He won every single one of them. Well, you hear a poll, who'd they talk to, 1,000 people? 1,000 people? Who'd the poll talk to, 1,500 people? And they tend to oversample the Democrats. The internal polls in the campaign are way, 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 way better than what we see in the news reports. Pay no attention. He's doing way, way better than anything you're going to hear from the media. Don't be distracted or discouraged. They oversampled the Democrats. Oh, the person. Usually in a poll, if a Democrat is 6 points ahead, that means the race is even. I heard that from one of the nation's top pollsters. Talk to me personally. If a Democrat is ahead in a poll by 6 points, the race is basically even. That's a good little thing to keep in mind. And the methodology of the polls has not improved from 4 years ago. I know that too in the conversation. I have conversations with these expert pollers because we have to be paying attention to this stuff. And one of them told me recently, you might as well take the methodology that these pollsters use, put it in a shoebox, and send it to the Smithsonian. That's how much value it has. We have to focus on one thing, and one thing only. Reach more voters. Every day, reach more voters. You can do it. You can reach voters I can't reach. I can reach voters you can't reach. We all have voters we can reach. If we all do 100%, if we all take every day and take our contacts on our phone, in our email list, take our contact list in our social media, our friends list, and literally, slowly, deliberately, carefully go through each and every person, go to A to Z as quickly as you can, and ask yourself, how can I influence this person? Is this person of like mind? How can I influence them? How can they influence other voters? This is how we win. Remember, Florida 2000, I think of it a lot now that I'm living here, Florida in the year 2000. George W. Bush won his presidential race here in one state by 537 votes. Between all of us watching right now, and we think about all our contact lists in our phones, in our emails, how many voters can we affect? A lot more than that. This is how we win. But the other thing sometimes we look at it and we say, oh my goodness, is when we see how much money the other side spends against us, right? And you could say, oh my gosh, how can we overcome that disadvantage, right? Well, let me give you an idea. This is from a book called For God and Country. We talked about it on one of our other programs, written by Ralph Reed, great political leader, expert, and activist, and great evangelical. And here's what he points out. He says, consider how much the Democrats threw at Trump in 2016. Now, this is interesting. Hillary Clinton spent $768 million. The Trump campaign spent $398 million. Did you know that was that much of a discrepancy? $398 million, the Trump campaign in 2016. Hillary, $768 million. And she lost. She outspent him nearly 2-1. He goes on. According to the campaign finance site, opensecrets.org, the combined cost of the presidential and congressional races in 2016 was nearly $6.5 billion. Billion. In that torrent of spending, an analysis by Bloomberg found that Hillary Clinton and her super PAC, now get ready for this, Hillary Clinton and her super PAC in all these races in 2016, all right, raised $1.2 billion. Trump and his super PAC, by comparison, raised only $650 million. That's unbelievable. He won, they lost. Again, they outpaced him by nearly 2-1. Now, no presidential candidate of either party who was outspent by this large of a margin has won the presidency since the dawn of the television era. And even this staggering spending advantage by Hillary and the Democrats understates Trump's financial disadvantage in 2016. Outside groups who backed Clinton collected almost triple the amount of Trump's outside groups. Listen to that again. Outside groups who backed Clinton collected almost 3 times the amount of money raised by the outside groups that supported Trump. The book I'm reading from, For God and Country, I really strongly recommend you to read this before the election. You can find it on Amazon. It's by Ralph Reed. He founded the Christian Coalition years ago, and now he heads up for Faith and Freedom Coalition. For God and Country. Really great book. So, isn't that fascinating? Now, here's something about the money. And the president talked about this in his rally, as you might have picked up on it. He said, I could pick up the phone, call my friends on Wall Street, tell them I need $5 million, and they'll send it to me. He said it's the easiest thing in the world. He's got people, he's got friends, you know, his background in real estate and all the business work that he's done. He can call up friends and, hey, you know, send me a few $1 million. And he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. Biden does it. The Democrats do it. The Democrats do it, and the Democrats, they'll rake in all this money. And we'll see, you know, and they'll spend it on, you know, they'll spend it. There's always ways to spend it. Advertising campaigns and all the different costs of the campaign. I mean, the more money you get in, the more you can spend when it comes to trying to get out the vote, right? So, but here's the point. When you see a statistic that says the Democrat opponent raised all these many more million, you know, sometimes, again, it's just like a psychological warfare. These reports will come out, you know, with bated breath, you know, the media will say, oh, well, the Democrats are far outspending, far outraising their Republican opponents. Well, first of all, like we saw from last time, it doesn't mean anything in terms of who actually ends up voting. But the other thing is, I mean, you could raise all kinds of money to have all kinds of ads that all kinds of people say, oh, that was stupid, you know, when they see the ad. That doesn't if it's not persuasive to them, it doesn't change their vote. But here's the point I'm making. Sure, Biden can raise a whole lot of money, but then if he called up a friend and said, hey, send me, you know, $1 million, send me $2 million, and they do it and he accepts it, then what does he have to do when that person calls asking a favor from him? He's got to listen to them. Now he's beholden to them. The donation, in other words, all that money raised, they've also sold some of their own freedom. Now this is going to be the leader of the free world. They've sold some of their freedom by accepting that, by going to ask for that money and then accepting it. Now they've got to also be responsive to that big donor, right? Hey, listen, Mr. President, I need a favor and I need you to do this, and please don't support that. And don't support that legislation. And then the man who's hopefully trying to do what's right for America and sign the right kind of bills and veto the wrong kind of bills, instead of just thinking about what's right for the American people and what's the best thing and what's the best trade deal and should I move the embassy to Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and should I get us out of these endless, ridiculous wars, right? Instead of just thinking about what's right and good for the American people, the candidate who asked his friend for $1 million and his friend sent the $1 million now has to also think about pleasing his friend. This is where President Trump is the most free president we've ever had. Internally free to think about, carry out what's best for the American people. Because he hasn't made himself beholden to all these rich friends. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the friends. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people making these big donations. God bless them. If they're supporting, you know, the right candidate, God bless them. They're helping all of us. All I'm saying is, as the president said, hey, listen, you can be sure I'm fighting for you. There's only one group of people I'm trying to please, he says. And that's you, the American people. I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting that you keep your jobs. I'm fighting that your household median income continues to grow. I'm fighting to give you the best economic year that we're ever going to have next year, which it is going to be the best year. I'm fighting for you to have peace in the world. You know, I'm going to give you a talk one of these evenings, my friends, about this being the president who has saved more human lives than anybody else in so many different ways. This is a president who's in the business of saving life. And but let's be happy about this point here about, hey, listen, he's free. He's got a free mind, a free heart. He is free to focus. And sure, you know, what it ends up is that, you know, the ledger is going to be very imbalanced. It'll be again very imbalanced again this year. Oh, they only raised X number of $1 million, where meanwhile these Democrats raised billions of dollars. You know what? So be it. So be it. He's going to do the right thing for us. And that ultimately is why you hear in these rallies something we've never heard before in presidential rallies. We love you. We love you. We love you. So, all right. Questions, comments? We're going to just take a few more of those and we'll get a blessing off to you, and then we'll be ready to join you in the morning for Mass. You can follow me for the Mass here at 10 a.m. each day. And President Trump loves America, wants the people to be happy. That is right. The truth will prevail, as Diane says. Absolutely right. And let's see, we love our president. You know, people love him. They love him because they know he loves them. They know he loves us. He loves us. He loves our church, works for our freedom. People like Manfredo don't seem to realize something. I don't know if Manfredo is a Catholic, but did you know that Biden wants to shut down Catholic ministries? He claims to be a devout Catholic. But do you know that he promised to reinstitute the mandate that would shut down Catholic ministries all across the country because of forcing them to choose between following the faith and following the law? We had to fight that mandate all the way up to the Supreme Court. This is what you hear about with the Little Sisters of the Poor, and this is what Katie is asking. I don't understand why so many people support Biden. What do you think, Father? I don't hear them giving any reason. That's the interesting thing, right? I often quote something that somebody said to me some months back. Says, you know, I like to challenge these Biden supporters to speak one sentence as to why they support Biden. Speak one sentence that doesn't contain the word Trump. In other words, are these people? I don't think Biden generates any enthusiasm. Any kind of enthusiasm on the other side. And thank you, Lisa, for your very nice comment. We welcome all those with us who, no matter what denomination you might belong to, we just love having you with us, and we do aim to speak the truth and give you helpful information. But yeah, you know, it's interesting. You know, are they supporting? I don't know if they're so much supporting Biden as they are opposing Trump. And honestly, you know, here's what I want to do. I want you, my friends, who are with me with these broadcasts, to invite people you know who are undecided voters and have them come here and have them present to us their questions and their concerns, because I want to address those questions and concerns of the undecided voters. I want to help them decide. And one of the things I do to help people decide is to say, look, why don't you do a simple exercise? Compare side by side, Andy, the list of accomplishments. Get President Trump's, actually the list is the size of a book. Put President Trump's accomplishments here and put Joe Biden's accomplishments here. Oh yes, I remember my friends from Puerto Rico, Daisy. We love you, Father. We met you at Silent No More from Puerto Rico. I remember you. God bless you, and thank you for your faithfulness and for your prayers. But isn't that a good exercise for those that are undecided in the way that they want to vote? Put the list of accomplishments side by side and compare them. That's all. Compare. That's part of the process. And you see, a person who's looking at the list of accomplishments, they're not looking at the list of accusations and silly, judgmental calumnies and lies. It's amazing how many lies people say about the president. Oh, he doesn't condemn white supremacy. Yeah, he's only condemned it more times than we've lost count how many times he's condemned it. Why do people still have to lie about that? Oh, he's a racist. He hasn't done a racist thing in his life. He's no racist. You know when people start calling people racists? When they get into Republican politics. That's the only time he ever was called a racist. He has done more for the black community than any other president. I mean, it's just unbelievable. He didn't do anything about the virus. He didn't have a plan. And we're not talking about, uninformed, John Q. Public saying something because he doesn't pay any attention to politics. We're talking about the candidates on the Democrat side for president and vice president of the United States. They actually say publicly that the president had and has no plan for dealing with the coronavirus. And meanwhile, publicly available are multiple plans that have been formulated and executed to deal with the various aspects of the problem. Plans for the testing, plans for the distribution of medical equipment, plans regarding the economy, plans regarding the schools. There's a whole cluster of national plans. You want to see them? Go to prolifevote.com and look in the section there that says the latest. And one of the things there is the coronavirus report that came out from Congress on October 2nd. And you have the links there for the various plans. So how on earth, and the 200,000 or so people who have died from this virus, do you think, first of all, that the United States of America is the only country? It's amazing how people talk about this sometimes, the anti-Trump deluded people, as if the United States of America is this dark place where only here we've had this terrible plague. It's from China, and it has affected the whole world. So first of all, before you start evaluating the progress that any particular country has made against the virus, right, you have to put it in the context of the whole world. Oh, and Mary, we have hundreds of people watching us right now. Remember, we're streaming on multiple platforms. YouTube is usually the lowest number. Check out the Facebook, and it's about a dozen. Right now, we're going off 8 simultaneous platforms. And we're adding more, by the way, in the next coming days. So the point is that, first of all, you have to put this in the context of the whole world. Secondly, you have to put this in the context of, it's not just President Trump. It's tens of thousands of experts. Tens of thousands of experts working with him on this. You think the President of the United States does anything just all by his lonesome? So, I mean, sometimes people talk about these things in a way that is so completely uninformed and out of context. And thirdly, Dr. Deborah Birx, speaking from a medical perspective as an expert in these kinds of problems, says that, and she said this early on, if we do everything perfectly, it's still going to take a couple of 100,000 lives. Remember, they said if we don't do things right, it could take 2 million lives. And the death toll ended up being just above 200,000. She said that's if we do everything perfectly. I challenge anybody, anywhere in the world, at any level of society, I would challenge anybody to be in the president's shoes during the midst of this unprecedented pandemic that we have been through. We've turned the corner, but it's still with us. But brothers and sisters, we're beating it. And that's the other beautiful thing. That's the thing about leadership. You can't lead if you're not positive. If you're not positive, you can't feed. You can't lead if you're not positive. He's positive. Not in a way that denies reality, but in a way that encourages and strengthens the human spirit. Every leader gives us a positive, forward-looking direction for what we do. And thank God for that beautiful, positive spirit. So, friends, thanks for spending this time with me. I really appreciate all of you coming on here and listening. Those of you that are with us frequently, those of you that may be just joining us, I thank you for the positive interaction. I thank you for listening and thinking and sharing your thoughts and doing so respectfully. And so may the Lord bless you now. May He strengthen you. May He bless your families. May He protect you. May He bless you in your work. May He answer all your prayers, and may He keep you as a strong voice for life and for this great country. And may He bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We'll be back with you tomorrow, morning Mass, 9 p.m. Broadcast, 7 p.m. President's Rally, and other broadcasting in between. So thanks, friends. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. Have a good night.
I think we have Richard Lee, we have Jim Garlow, and we have Father Frank Pavone. Someplace they were in the audience, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Follow him, Father Frank Pavone, Fr. Frank Pavone, on Twitter. He is the National Director of Priests for Life. Please go to priestsforlife.org.